Jane Getty has been a teacher and a writer in our community since she moved to Blacksburg in 1977. She is finishing a memoir about growing up in Louisiana, on Louisiana's historic River Road during the last days of segregation, an issue both personal and political within her home. This is our first piece of fiction. It is The Arc of History, Jane Getty.
The Arc of History. Last summer I spent a weekend in Washington with old friends who happened to be in DC for a conference. We took the opportunity to spend some time together to eat at favorite restaurants, poke around DuPont Circle, go to museums, and check out the Martin Luther King Memorial, which I had never seen before. It was a scorching hot day and a long walk from the Hirshhorn to King's Memorial. By the time we reached it, my face was beet red and radiating heat. I popped into the gift shop restroom to douse myself with cold water, hoping to cool down before approaching what felt to me like Stone Mountain of Georgia, like my Louisiana in the middle of summer. Very few others had braved the mid-afternoon heat to stand beneath King's imposing figure. I noticed that most were African American, families posing for pictures with King, then drifting along the semicircular wall, pointing out different lines from his speeches. Each visitor seemed to have a personal favorite. I paused to read one of mine. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Those words are personal. I think of Jeanette. Remember her standing at the stove in our old River Road kitchen, stirring a roux, while Jeannie and I did algebra homework at the kitchen table. I was 13 years old, didn't much like math, and lacked the mental discipline my homework required. My mind drifted to more interesting subjects. On that particular day, the subject was reincarnation. I don't remember what Jeannie or I said we wanted to be in our next lives, but I'll never forget what Jeanette said. I don't care what I come back as long as it isn't black. Suddenly, the steam from that pot seemed like tears. This didn't sound like Jeanette, light-hearted, quick-witted Jeanette, who made us laugh with her funny stories, brilliant mimicry, charismatic personality, whose wit was sharpest when skewering the high and the mighty, like the pompous, racist head of a white Catholic church in our town, Monsignor Gubler, whom Nett called Monster Gobbler. When she delivered a Monster Gobbler sermon in our kitchen, she sounded just like him, even looked like him. She made us laugh till our stomachs hurt. But in the kitchen that day, there was no hint of humor in that quiet statement. Jeanette never lifted her head from the black cast iron pot. What kind of society could make a person feel that bad? It's 50 years later, and I've learned so many things I want to tell Jeanette. I want her to know what neither of us knew that day on the River Road. That after emancipation, the newly freed slaves from sugarcane plantations up and down the river joined the Union Army. They helped build a Union fort in our town at the mouth of Bayou Lafourche, and they died protecting it. A deep secret lay buried beneath the pumping station and the Dairy Queen at the fork of Bayou Lafourche and the Mississippi River. We passed it every day and never knew. When I was a child in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, the nuns told us that during the Civil War, a Yankee gunboat fired a cannon at our town, and the Blessed Virgin Mother had stopped it with her finger. The statue of Mary that stands in the front yard of St. Vincent's looks like many others. Right hand raised, index finger pointing toward heaven, except our Mary's index finger was missing. A glass case at the entrance to St. Vincent's Academy proudly displayed the Blessed Mother's index finger nestled in a cotton-lined cardboard box. I studied it respectfully each time I passed on my way to catechism. Neither the nuns nor Monsignor Gubler ever told us about Fort Butler. True history, authentic heroism, the real sacrifices, lay buried for more than 100 years. This summer in Washington, I learned even more Louisiana history at a special exhibit titled Changing America, the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863, and the March on Washington, 1963. Most surprising was to learn that in 1896, there had been 130 registered black voters in Louisiana. I'm sorry, 130,000. By the time my father was born, that number had plummeted to 1,342. The Jim Crow era was just drawing to a close when I graduated from high school in 1965. My class was the last segregated class to ever graduate from Donaldsonville High School. Most of the visitors to the Changing America exhibit breezed past the things that interested me most, like the March 13, 1864 handwritten letter from Abraham Lincoln to the newly elected governor of Louisiana. "My dear sir," Lincoln writes, "I congratulate you on having fixed your name in history as the first free state governor of Louisiana." I had never known this iconic American president had written to the governor of my state, gently, diplomatically, trying to persuade him to extend the vote to Louisiana's black population, if not to all at that time, then especially to, quote, "those who have fought gallantly in our ranks." Lincoln goes on to suggest the governor might need their help in, quote, "some trying time to come, to keep the jewel of liberty within the family of freedom." He was talking about those soldiers at Fort Butler, Jeanette's people. If only she could have known that in the midst of all that weighed on Lincoln's shoulders in the year 1864, he had written that letter. I want to rewrite Jeanette's history because its arc was just too long. I want to lighten the burden of shame and sorrow she carried her whole life, and I glimpsed that day in the kitchen. I want Jeanette to hear the very personal voice I hear in Lincoln's letter, so that she might know the shame was ours, and that America's greatest president was even more hers than mine.